identifying the stuff going on up here, right? Because from day one, we've been on some kind of program, right? It wasn't necessarily a personally suggested program. In fact, we've been programmed without our consent, right? By our parents, by our siblings, by our cousins, by our religious leaders, by our teachers, by our government, by things we never ever voted for ever, and it's all been just feeding into this. So what I find very interesting about food and raw food in general is that it starts to activate the liberation process of self-sovereignty, right? It starts to allow you to actually identify those conflicting thoughts inside your mind, and you start to get a hold of it, and you start to realize, like, whoa, wait a minute, did I consent on that? Like, what's really going on up here? It creates a self-awareness that a lot of people just don't have any reference point for. Does that make sense? You start to get more intuitive. You start to get more in tune. And you actually, as you travel down this road, for me anyways, as I've traveled down this raw food path and this vegetarian path, one thing has happened to me is that I become very intuitive about what my needs really are, right? What kind of excess do I need? What kind of baggage do I need? What kind of relationships do I want to be involved in? And then on the nutrition side, as a nutrition specialist, I've realized that what I actually need from a moment-to-moment basis, right? What kind of food do I need? Do I need a green vegetable juice? Do I need some kind of superfood thing? Do I need water? Do I need an almond? Whatever. Like I become more intuitive, and that's kind of a byproduct of getting on natural food opposed to the rigmarole and the conflict of the diet world. Who's into diets? Nobody? Whoa, well, what's going on? Because when I go outside, everybody's on some kind of diet. I mean, what's that about? Diet, first of all, the word die is in there. Right? Does anyone here want to, like, die?
No.
No. Okay, obviously. What I'm really into is actually flipping that around and turning it into a live it. Right? Where we create a lifestyle that's all about moving in the direction of our highest potential, and which is really, to me, just living. Right? If you can start to create energy reserves and actually create pathways for that energy to travel through you, you can start getting into a moment by moment live it, right? Which is just guiding you towards pleasure. Right? We're all done with diets. We're all done with like all the different programs that have been thrown at us from this expert, this guru, this so-and-so. Right? We've all gone through that, and I'm not saying it's all for nothing and it doesn't work. That's not really what I'm saying about that is that one thing I've figured out in the diet world is that there's a massive amount of conflict. In fact, it's almost like there's a lot of like religious agenda attached to some of it. Like who here is familiar with raw food? Just so I know who I'm talking about. Who's like been in the raw food community at all for a little while? Okay. So this is kind of like what happens, and it's really in the whole spectrum of the diet, alternative health, raw food world. Like in the community, what happens a lot of times is that people get so hyper-focused on their deal, whatever their trip is, and they forget that there's a world around them and there's other people doing all kinds of different things, experimenting and creating all kinds of different results. They get hyper-focused on one thing, and then if they start to create results for themselves, they have an aha moment. Like, oh, that must be it. That's what worked. That's what works for me. I'm going to make the best diet program or weight loss program or South Beach abomination program, right? That, by the way, I just say that because that, like, has anyone here read that book, The South Beach Diet? Who threw that thing away? Anybody?
I didn't.
You did throw it
I read
away.
like 2 pages, and then it sat around for a long time, and then I just ended up.
Right, I mean, I browsed through. I saw it on the counter. It said something about like it was like had some weird conversation about like organic is okay, but it doesn't really matter. It's like it was very unspecified. Anyways, so that's kind of what we're dealing with. massive confusion, and then one person finds the answer for them at that particular moment in time at their stage in life, which does not account for every other factor in their life, right? It's just one piece of the puzzle, and then they create this whole program, and then they proliferate it to everyone and assume that that is what's going to work for everyone. Well, I do have one thing that I've learned and that I resonate with truth. And by the way, what I've kind of figured out for myself is this word truth is very interesting. It gets used a lot and very misinterpreted because one person's truth is not another person's. Absolutely not. And as a nutritionist and being in the raw food world for a while, I know that one person's poison is another person's panacea. And the reverse is true too. So we have to really get on board with that and get into this whole self-sovereignty process where everything that I'm saying is being filtered through your own peripheral input, and you are able to take some kind of nugget out of it, whatever that is for you, right? Because I'm not into creating some kind of like regimented program that's going to fit you into this box so you can start like operating within a box, and you can start living in a box, and everything is boxed in reality, right? I want to open up the box, expand the conversation, and make it applicable to as many people as possible. And that's what truth is to me, is that truth, if something is to be true, it has to be in something called a probability field, right? What's the greatest probability that this can be worked out for the greatest amount of people? That's kind of where I'm at now. I used to be a lot more hardcore years ago about this, like it's raw food is the answer, vegan, vegetarianism, that's the way, that's the path to enlightenment, that's what it's all about. And then somewhere down the line, I got a few like punches in the gut, and I realized that, well, maybe that isn't the answer for everyone. That's the answer for me, but for everyone, it might be a different story. What I really think about raw food, and as I get into I progress with this conversation, what I really think raw food is all about in our time right now is it's all about deconstructing the obstructions that we've silted ourselves up with based on the standard idea of feeding ourselves that we've been given, right, or gifted, however you want to look at it. And the result of that is basically we've given our power away to some kind of massive corporate entity, and we got distracted. All of us, our parents, every single one of us has been distracted from the plug-in drug from day one, right? And the quickest way to get into this whole like personal liberation process is to get off that, like the news, right? Or what I call the same old program running over and over, looking to feed you whatever distraction it can to keep you off from the truth, right? And so you can tell, like, raw food, this is for me, I never talked about this kind of stuff before. I never even, I had ideas about it, but before I got into raw plant food and started cleansing and started getting rid of all the toxins in my body, I never really had all these epiphanies. My mind was always on some other goal, right? I was always striving for some goal. And once I got into it, I really let it take over me, because it wasn't so much like me moving towards it. What I wanted to do with my life had nothing to do with what I'm doing right now. I had no aspirations to be like a public speaker and an author and a health educator. I just wanted to be an athlete. I had 2 major knee surgeries and somehow got led into raw food because of it, healed my knees, and I wanted to get back on with my life. And somehow I got typhooned out of that, and here I am standing in front of you guys now. So that's the power of what we ingest and how that influences our entire being.